Epperson. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vigilant Aerospace. We're going to talk about what some common obstacles are. Then we're going to talk about some specific examples of drone ports that are overcoming those obstacles today. So I'm going to give you all some practical examples of programs that have gotten off the ground. We're in a great place to begin to look at and analyze programs because it's obviously brand new. There are a lot of things that are going on and developing with drone ports, and so we can learn lessons really quickly and apply them. All right, so we're going to talk about common drone port obstacles and talk about some solutions and some specific examples in drone ports that are overcoming these problems. So the first one we're talking about, funding sources. That's job number one. You got to get off the ground somehow, and finding innovative ways and creative ways to get the resources has been really interesting researching that. Regulatory permissions, a really big one, obviously. Lack of commercial activity around or expected for your drone port. How do you make sure that you've got enough activity and interest? And then finally, lack of qualified companies and pilots that can immediately use the drone port, and how you make sure you can overcome that problem when you're launching. So we're going to start with some examples here. One example you all may have heard of is GrandSky. And let me clarify, when I talk about a drone port, this presentation in particular is focused on commercial drone ports that are going to be serving commercial flights. Obviously, there are a lot of great academic and research drone ports that exist. If you look at the UAS test site system that the FAA put together and authorized, those exist and are great. And in fact, those are leveraged and utilized by some of these. But we're just talking specifically about how people create successful commercial drone ports to serve industries in their area and their region. And the other thing, of course, is they're often cooperating with military organizations, whether it's a base or whether it's something else. In this case, obviously, it's GrandSky Air Force Base, and so they have a synergistic relationship. But it is a commercial drone port that exists to serve private industry. So that's kind of our definition for the purpose of this presentation. So you all probably know about GrandSky, kind of universal beyond visual line of sight COA that they've just achieved. Worked for a couple of years to get that. They are private equity funded. GrandSky Development Inc. Backed this. They have a very innovative program that they use, and I'll talk about on my next slide here. They're primarily focused on testing. So their lease antennas are all around testing new UAS aircraft. Usually that's serving the DoD, but they're really trying to get out into larger space. But it's definitely private leases with commercial activity. So for funding sources, they did some really interesting things. All of you, and especially the economic developers, will find this very interesting. So the Air Force has a special program where they can take a portion of an unused space and they can lease it. So they were able to lease it to the local county. GrandSky Development was able to come in and then take that lease. They have a 50-year lease on the land that was leased from the airport to the county to GrandSky private program. It's really, really interesting what they've done. And as they were doing this, before they did it, they got a $10 million lease from Northrop Grumman to test new aircraft before they started building. So they put together a series of deals that made this work from day one. So that's one of those interesting and innovative things they've done. Obviously, they work very closely with the U.S. Air Force because they are adjacent to the base and can actually use some of the base facilities. That gives them a lot of permissions. And they work very closely with their congressional delegation. That helps them a lot. They pre-released, so they had anchor tenants when they started this. The result of that is that they've had additional tenants. Northrop Grumman, General Thomas came in as a second tenant, and it's kind of like if they're there, we better be there too. You'll see that's a pattern actually across other drone ports. Is that once they get an anchor tenant, they're able to then go ahead and attract multiple additional tenants, just like a mall. So what they did really that helped is that they got a lot of national publicity. So this is probably the earliest. I start with it because it's one of the most successful. And Tom Sawyer is the developer behind GrandSky Development Corporation. And he is a well-known real estate developer. So he came into this and learned about how to use all these programs to create this drone port. So I really looked at this drone port particularly for great examples of how this can be done throughout the U.S., as we'll see with some of the others as well. But finding qualified companies and pilots, they're leaning on the military, obviously, and they're leaning on Northrop Grumman. That helps them a lot. Not everybody has all the resources that this group has. And we're sort of aware of that as I talk about this particular drone port. But some of the things that they did with the military and Air Force and use of airports and facilities that are underutilized, the ability to transfer some of those to private use and private leases, and then take those on down the line to a development company that's going to use them for a particular purpose. Very creative, very interesting thing, and that can be done almost anywhere. There are programs like this all over the U.S. shows some of the other drone ports. They've done similar sorts of things. So another one that we're going to look at is Cape May County. So you may have heard of this. It's in New Jersey. A couple of things that are interesting about this. They had an early public use certificate of authority. The certificate of authority is a FAA certificate to allow you to fly an unmanned aircraft under specific conditions for a public purpose. Okay, so you have this dual system that the FAA runs, and so COAs, probably everybody knows this, but I'll just explain it real quickly. COAs are special permissions to fly unmanned aircraft. Waivers are for private sector flight of unmanned aircraft, and you get a waiver of specific rules. You have to do special things like fly at night, fly over people, fly beyond visual line of sight, fly with extended visual line of sight. You have somebody watching it, but it's out of sight of the pilot. So all types of waivers that you can get. And there are aerospace authorizations, which are separate. But using a COA like this is very creative. This COA was used to do test flying, particularly to test the concept for a flying cell phone tower. And this was a really high priority problem. It's one of the reasons that they were able to get permission to do this. The other thing that's really important about this one is that they just in the last few days, this was on August 28th, they attracted a $3 million grant from the Department of Commerce. And again, it's because they're doing very innovative things and they are using underutilized resources here. They're building a 20,000 square foot drone facility. They expect to generate 130 jobs and $1.9 million in private investment. So for funding sources, this was organized and funded by local economic development authority with help from the county. They were revitalizing an underutilized county asset, which was this airport. They pre-lease their facility prior to building, so they're expanding and they're already putting leases in place before they start their building. So again, really traditional real estate things. A lot of this is not exotic. You're going to build a mall, you're going to take a similar approach, and then they attract this growth. So their funding scheme, again, very creative and has really left itself very quickly to being able to put the DronePorts together. Work very closely with the FAA, especially the telecom industry. As a local economic developer, I think that gave them a lot more heft and it allows them to go out and talk about solving an important problem. In this case, if there's mobile cell phone towers on a drone, they'll respond to emergencies. To respond to the problem of lack of commercial activity, they pre-leased and then launched a county-sponsored UAS tech incubator. So they are immediately taking up a portion of their space with a local incubator that's focused on developing UAS tech. And they already had this approved COA, and that also helps them to attract tenants. They create a lot of national publicity, particularly with their telecom projects, and then they leverage that into a couple of drone companies going ahead and taking out leases after the incubator had been announced. These are high-tech development companies doing a variety of things for drone operators. So again, they follow the. So a lot of similarity in pattern, even though totally different place, totally different context, no Air Force base nearby, able to put together similar sort of resources to launch a drone. Here's another one. You may be familiar with this one. I bet you may be working with this one. So, located in Boulder City, Nevada, organized and funded by Boulder City. VAS 11 is a nonprofit for workforce development, and then it also has a sister company, Aerodrome LLC, which also does training. So, a lot of overlap with the prior model. Working on construction of that now. They say that it's fully funded, so this is getting built, focused on UAS research, especially education, training, and job development. They have a 50-acre facility, runway, and something that they're leveraging is that they're close to an FAA UAS test. So they're using that COA as well. Not everybody has access to that. There are other ways to do COAs and waivers. That's one asset that they're leveraging. How do they use access to the Air Force Base and missions that they have to do there? Here, they're using the COA as a starting point that is available through the nearby test site. They outsourced a lot of their operations initially to a tech and training company, Aerospace, with proven history of setting up these programs. They're cooperating with a job-based nonprofit that does STEM education and job development training. They're co-locating with that test site, which leverages the existing relationship. They're providing on-site training and support, which is a way to then begin to attract other people in. And their first tenant, again, an anchor tenant to help launch the thing, is a funded nonprofit. They're dealing with the issue of where you get the pilots and where you get the operators from companies by building their own, right? So you're training their own pilots, and they're also running an incubator to big companies. And so they're then attracting additional companies as they So this is a really interesting one. This is the UAS facility in York County. It's organized and funded through a state grant program in Virginia. They've just raised through that program $300,000 of the total 1.3 they're going to use to build their facility. They expect to be done in late 2019. Primary focus is on business users. They've already got the 190 acres, and then they've got a 240-acre industrial park over which they're going to be able to fly. These are a little bit earlier than the other group. Similar in Hazard, Kentucky, this is the National Unmanned Robotic Research and Development Center. It's a state organization with local counties, colleges, and private partners. The land was donated, and so they're focusing on first responder training, with an expectation that it will generate economic development for that area. And then finally, Salisbury, which is located in Maryland. It's one of the few of these types of drone ports that is co-located with an airport. They have multiple areas that they're already permitted to fly around that airport. So they've got three authorized areas with miles of range that they can use. It's funded by the county, airport commission, and the county to get it off the ground. They've already recruited 50 user companies to get this started. And they're raising the money, so they're a little bit earlier than the other. All right, so that's a little bit of background on drone ports that are beginning to solve these 5 major problems, how they're doing it, and lighting the way to there's some obvious patterns here, setting up your system, getting your authorization, getting a anchor tenant, just like you would in a mall, so you can begin to get other tenants and be ready to launch your drone port.